next movie. And our next movie is one of those works that will provide, in the years to come, a point of reference for myself and probably for a lot of other people when the conversation turns to the worst films of all time. This movie is called Highlander 2, The Quickening. What a title. And it somehow manages to combine a war on the planet Zeist with the collapse of the ozone layer on the planet Earth. The movie stars Christopher Lambert and Sean Connery as immortals from the other planet who have been on Earth for 500 years and are now involved with a group of underground scientists who are battling to save humanity from the clutches of an evil cartel which is overcharging the nations of Earth for the shield which protects the planet from deadly solar radiation.
Hold him off.
You have to know here that there is only one way immortals can die, by decapitation. And now, as they face that very fate in a room that works like a large Cuisinart, is Connery terrified? Not if he can still deliver a speech like this, he isn't.
Most people have a full measure of life. And most people just watch it slowly drip away.
One of the small pleasures of the movie is the way the battle for control of entire planets is engaged in entirely in dialogue made out of movie cliches.
Peace is highly overrated. Things don't change, Katana. I like that. After all these years, you're still a jerk.
Highlander 2, The Quickening. What a title. This movie, I think I can safely say, is a film that defies description. How else to account for a character who comes from another planet but seems to know nothing he didn't learn in Scotland 500 years ago? Or a planetary shield that should have produced an ice age but creates a heat wave instead? Or an ozone layer that can repair itself in just 25 years? We've got a month to go, Gene, before we start choosing our list of the year's worst films, but I think it's safe to reserve a place on my list for Highlander 2, The Quickening.
When they thought of the title, didn't anybody say, you know, that's kind of awkward?
How about the original title, Highlander? If you saw a movie called Highlander, would you think it was about somebody from outer space?
No, I think about somebody from Scotland. But
yeah,
it is a completely ridiculous movie. The only redeeming value is that it ends. They just wrap it up real fast at the end. The special effects, I read about this picture. It cost $34 million to make this picture. I can't believe it.
You're kidding me.
Shot in Argentina. Where did the money go?
$34 million? They must have had a limousine every time they went to the John.
The special effects look cheap. They don't look expensive. Sean Connery got a grin on his face even in some of the tension-filled scenes because he's cashing a big paycheck. He probably got paid millions for this picture.
Well, the thing about Sean Connery, who in all of the James Bond movies has always had an ability to deliver dialogue with a straight face and still let you know that he gets the joke, he does it here too.
Yeah, it's totally appropriate.
He gets through this movie without getting scarred because the way he delivers the dialogue is part of the fun.
You could buy a new home with what he got.
And our next movie is Return to the Blue Lagoon, which begins with an amazing coincidence. Now remember the Blue Lagoon, made in 1980 and starring Brooke Shields and Christopher Atkins. Who could forget that? Try as we might. Well, it turns out they attempted to sail away from the island, that young couple, but they died in the attempt. However, their 2-year-old son was rescued from their drifting boat by a passing ship and was cared for by a widow who was on board with her baby daughter. But it turned out that the ship carried the plague. So, to give those three a chance of survival, the captain set the widow, the boy, and the girl adrift. And where did they land? You got it, on the very same island from the first movie. These scenes here take place after the young girl and boy have become adolescents and the mother has died. One day, just like the characters in the first movie, they begin to experience unusual emotions and strange desires.
I don't touch myself.
Yes, you do. You're always touching those when you look in the mirror.
She's measuring how much they've grown. Besides, you shouldn't be looking at me when I'm naked.
Why not? I used to see you naked all the time.
Well, it's different now.
Soon, trouble arrives in paradise when a passing ship lands at the Lost Island.
My name is Richard. We've been waiting for you for a long time.
I'm Lily, and I'm ready for you to take us back to civilization.
What?
To a teenage boy who's only seen one girl in his life, the visiting captain's daughter makes quite an impression. For one thing, she's dressed.
But you said you found all those clothes stupid and unnecessary.
I do. It's just... I wonder what she looks like underneath them.
And while that relationship is running its inevitable and predictable course, there is also a swarthy sailor who chases the girl all over the island until something terrible happens to him. I wouldn't want to give it away, but for example, like he's eaten by a shark or something. Return to the Blue Lagoon is easily one of the most ridiculous movies I have ever seen in a long career of many ridiculous movies. There is not a moment that's believable, even in the fantasy world occupied by these dippy characters. The whole movie is a tease which wants to arouse our prurient interest but not satisfy them. It's sort of like one big cinematic swimsuit issue.
Well, it is. That's all it is. It's a sexual tease straight throughout. At a certain point, you begin to feel sort of dirty yourself because you realize they're asking you to leer at a fairly young character, a young woman in particular. And so it's a pretty empty picture.
You know, at least in the first movie, the two turtles got it on together.
Oh, I forgot that. Very good. You're a real student of these pictures.
Let's step outside.
You! Get out of here! You're obsolete! That thing is a killer!
Peter Weller again stars as a mechanical policeman in RoboCop 2, this time battling an evil version of himself. RoboCop 2 is one of 5 summer movies we'll be reviewing this week on Siskel and Ebert. I'm Gene Siskel of the Chicago Tribune.
And I'm Roger Ebert of the Chicago Sun-Times. Our first movie is RoboCop 2, and all during this movie I kept asking myself, how can a movie this violent and confused also be this funny? It's like there are two movies here. One is an hilarious satire on futuristic advertising, and the other one is an exercise in violence that really offended me with its portrayal of a young boy as a vicious killer. The movie begins with Detroit in still more trouble than it was in the last RoboCop movie, and Dan O'Hurley plays the billionaire who wants, in his words, to take the city private.
RoboCop 2 will seek out every laboratory, every dealer, and rid our city of mutants. Things will be a lot quieter with this boy around.
Peter Weller plays RoboCop again, and the movie raises the question of whether he's more of a man or a machine. It's one of several loose ends that never get tied up.
Are you Alex Murphy? No. Are you human? No. You are simply a machine. A machine.
Linda Bauer plays the psychologist who reprograms RoboCop, and there's a subtle hint here that RoboCop may be deliberately giving her the answer she wants. That's also not followed up on.
You know, I'm really very lucky. We can do in moments with you what would take years with a human patient.
I'm really very lucky.
Now, what I couldn't show you because the studio didn't include him in the scenes they supplied is a young boy named Hobb, who is played by Gabriel Damon and is the right-hand man of the drug dealer. This is a kid who looks about 12, and he mows people down viciously with a machine gun and uses a whole lot of R-rated four-letter words. It really disturbed me to see this little boy in this violent role, and it disturbed me even more when I started to think about it because RoboCop is rated R, but as everyone knows, kids do get into R-rated movies like this one, and even more of them will see it on home video. Was this 12-year-old criminal written into the movie to give the underage viewers someone to identify with? I'd like to think that wasn't possible, but I can't think of any other reason for such an unlikely, depressing, inappropriate, and distasteful script decision. Isn't any age group immune from violent cynicism?
Well, that was my reaction to the picture. I was sort of flabbergasted. You sit there and these words are coming out of this kid. Now, I'm a big fan of Stanley Kubrick's A Clockwork Orange, which showed people probably more in their 20s, a roving gang, a street gang. And I can understand why that can be done with an intelligence and with a point. Here, it's just like they're looking for a new trick, like a different kind of monster. All right, we'll make the kid the killer. And it wasn't even winked at anyway. It was played pretty straightforward, and it had. And you mentioned that a film this funny. There were just a couple of bits, Roger. I think you have to be careful. There were a couple of cute bits in the film that are funny.
More than a couple, Gene, but they just are dropped in. It's very strange because the movie is one thing, And then every once in a while, it's like you're watching television, and you get these commercials, like the commercial for the seatbelt that ties the car thief.
That opens the picture up.
There are several moments like that that I did laugh at, and I thought, gee, this is funny. I'm laughing, and now I'm back to the dreary, depressing movie, which is a mess as far as the screenplay is concerned, which is very offensive in the use of this 12-year-old. Now, make no mistake about it, this kid does kill people.
Yes.
He does take over the drug lord's gang.
Yes.
He does mastermind.
And it isn't played for laughs in any way. It isn't played cute. It isn't Bugsy Malone. It's mean-spirited, ugly, and you said the screenplay is a mess. It is a mess. There are stories that are not tied together. In the first film, we had warm feelings toward this RoboCop character, a man, some kind of mutant in a machine, and here's none of that.
Can't even make up its mind if he's in there or not.
Do you like rap music?
Yeah, I like rap.
You like rap music? Well, turn around real slow then. I'm from the Rap Coalition of America. Take that gun off, throw it over there. Throw the gun over there. If you like rap music so much, how come you ain't smiling?
I'm smiling.
Smile real big.
I'm smiling.
And let's do a rap together.
Yo,
baby, yo, baby, yo.
Yo, baby, yo, baby.
Eddie Murphy is back as a Detroit cop fighting Southern California crime in Beverly Hills Cop 2, and we're going to be reviewing it this week. I'm Roger Ebert of the Chicago Sun-Times.
And I'm Gene Siskel of the Chicago Tribune. And I wasn't the biggest fan of Beverly Hills Cop, the first one. Too much action crowding out Eddie Murphy's one-liners in that film for me. And the same is even more true with this even less successful sequel. Once again, Murphy is back in Los Angeles, this time tracking a beautiful woman who is part of a gang of gun runners. Sylvester Stallone's wife, Bridget Nielsen, is the woman, and Murphy links up with her at a gun club operated by Dean Stockwell.
Chip, perfect timing for one.
Chip Kane, I'm the manager here.
How are you, Chip? It's a beautiful place you guys. Very comfortable.
We do our best. Maybe you'd like to have a guest membership.
Yeah, that'd be nice. Be kind of like shooting guns in the house.
Where could I send you an application?
1603 Hillcrest. It's a big white house. Beautiful place.
We'll send it along with the 44 shells.
Well, I'll be sure to duck.
While tracking the gun runners, Murphy lives the good life in Beverly Hills, occupying a vacant house, entertaining his cop friends from the original movie. Coming up, a predictable sight gag.
Stolen this house.
My uncle's house.
I want you out of this pool and out of this house in 7 minutes. You're still a police officer, for Christ's sake. You're going to get us all in deep.
Well, I love when you talk dirty. Get your man after this pool with me.
Axel, get out of the damn pool!
Predictable. Another problem with the film? Non-stop action, when all we really want to hear is Eddie Murphy talk funny, which he finally does at a party at Hugh Hefner's mansion, where he meets the leader of the gun-running gang, who has just wounded one of Murphy's police friends.
Are we having a problem here? Hef! Hugh Hefner! Axel Foley! I'm sorry, I feel like I know you already, because you know how many times I've put your magazine up and forget about it. It's not important, but I just want to give you some background on some of your guests here. This is Stamopoulos. He's into guns and drugs, Hugh Hefner. And this is Max. And Max kills cops for a living!
Given what they shot, I sure would have liked to have seen that scene go on. I wish the whole movie had been set in the mansion compared to what they actually did shoot here. It could have been very funny with Murphy mixing it up with a whole bunch of Hollywood types. But Beverly Hills Cop 2 was directed by Tony Scott, who just directed the best-selling film Top Gun. And I think what Scott has done, I think what this movie has done, is basically turned Eddie Murphy into a walking, talking airplane, surrounded by noise, car crashes, and aggravating wall-to-wall music. It actually hurt my eyes and ears to watch this film. Filmmakers, please, leave Eddie Murphy alone. Let him just talk to us, please.
The original idea for Beverly Hills Cop was a good one. A tough street cop from Detroit goes to Los Angeles where he's a fish out of water. He doesn't know how to act with all of these chic people, but he manages to do his own thing.
He outsmarts them
They
all.
got about half of that in the first movie. They don't have anything in this movie. It's the people in Beverly Hills who are out of water, because what Eddie Murphy does in this film is just scream at them all the time, and it's not funny. The very first clip we showed on this show, where he has that gun against the guy's head, I don't know how you felt. Did that make you laugh because Eddie Murphy is such a funny guy? No, it made me feel sorry for the poor guy that has this gun pointed at him while this guy is screaming and wisecracking at him. He turns into a loudmouth, obnoxious bore in this movie, and that's not funny.
Well, when you say loud, I mean, I can't stand pictures that don't have the confidence to be quiet.
Yes.
This picture is just strung with rock music all the way along.
If you can't be confident when you got Eddie Murphy who can sit here on this set and be funny for 2 hours just looking at the camera, why won't they just let the guy talk?
This movie is high-tech, assembly line, movie making by the numbers. It has no creativity, it has no acting, it has no humor.
If they hire him, why don't they let him?
That's right.
Hire him, use him.
You could have plugged anybody into this movie, and it would have been just as bad.
Now we come to a sequel to another big box office hit. This one is called Grease 2. It's set in 1961. It's not really a sequel since it doesn't have the same stars or follow the same characters as the original Grease. I guess it's more of a retread. The movie takes us back to Rydell High for more mindless nonsense involving the greasers, the teachers, and the wholesome students. But there's one major difference in Grease 2, though. The original Grease was about class warfare between the greasers and the preppies, but this movie has everybody on the same side. They're all working for the same choreographer. Here's a scene, for example, where the school's motorcycle gang rehearses for the high school talent show.
I think we could all use a little guaranteed all-the-way action, and I know just the place.
When the motorcycle gang is appearing in the senior talent show or whatever it's called, I don't think John Travolta would have gotten involved in those kinds of goody activities in the first movie. But anyway, that biker gang is known as the T-Birds. And they have a ladies' auxiliary made up of their girlfriends. They're called the Pink Ladies. And there's a rule, Pink Ladies only date T-Birds, until one day this preppy from Australia turns up and spots the president of the Pink Ladies, and it's love at first sight.
So how's your first week been?
Oh, great. Yours?
Oh, listen, there's such a fascinating world of chemistry out there.
Yeah, I know. Hey, how would you know that Stephanie Zanoni?
Stephanie Zanoni is one of my very best... Uh-oh. Michael, I think there's something you don't understand. You see, Stephanie Zanoni is a pink lady, which means if you're not a T-Bird, which you are not, you can look, but don't touch. Michael, I wouldn't even look.
Well, then how'd you become one of these T-Birds, then? Hey?
The two stars of the movie are Maxwell Caulfield and Michelle Pfeiffer, who plays Stephanie Zanoni, the one who was walking away by the fence. It's inevitable they're going to be compared with John Travolta and Olivia Newton-John, and are they as good? Well, Pfeiffer has some of the same electricity as Newton-John, but Maxwell Caulfield is no John Travolta, and what's worse, he doesn't even dance much in this movie. I thought Grease was about dancing, practically. The plot is really dumb. To win the Pink Lady's admiration, Caulfield puts on a mask and appears as the mystery motorcyclist jumping his motorcycle over old Studebakers at high school hops. It seems like an hour goes by, though, before the woman finally figures out who this guy is. She can only see him, you see, from the bottom of the face down. The plot wouldn't be so bad if the movie had more life, but it has forgettable songs, choreography that looks like crowd control, and for that matter, not very much Grease.
Well, I'll compare the two, and I don't think that they stack up well at all for another reason. Singing ability.
Well,
this woman you say has some of the same electricity. She's pretty. I don't think much more than that, and she can't sing like Olivia Newton-John. The film doesn't have the same songs as the first film. First film had a number of very memorable songs, huge hits. I can't remember a single song from this film.
So we have a man who can't dance like Travolta, a woman who cannot sing like Olivia Newton-John,
Right.
songs that are no good.
Yeah, at the same time, I think I liked it a little bit more than you because it was sort of an homage to the biker. And I find that myth appealing, and I found that the film got a lot of its power just by introducing the character of this heroic biker image.
The question,
but I don't think it's as good as the first one.
Why did Grease 2 have to be a total remake of the first one with very little invention and not a new story and not really a different era? Why not advance it 10 years to 1969 or 1979 or make it Punks versus the Faculty? Anything other than just the same stuff recycled.
Our next film is Ghostbusters 2, the sequel to the best-selling movie comedy of all time, and it's a major disappointment. And what's so surprising is that the film contains little comic energy or invention. It looks as if the filmmakers, particularly the writers, simply didn't try to do anything special. The four Ghostbusters reassemble 5 years later to destroy a river of psychoreactive slime that has invaded New York City. Here they talk to the slime.
I have seen some disgusting crud in my time, but you take the cake. You're just...
This is what you do with your spare time.
Peter, this is an incredible breakthrough. I mean, what a discovery, a psychoreactive substance. Whatever this stuff is, it responds to human emotional states.
Mood slime.
The story is virtually the same as the original, save for the introduction of a baby, the infant son of Sigourney Weaver, who Bill Murray is still pursuing. She's divorced.
Well, what do you think?
Well, he's ugly. I mean, he's not Elephant Man ugly, but he's not attractive. Was his father ugly?
Don't listen.
Murray is really forced to carry most of the movie with his wisecracks. The film really could have used more byplay between Rick Moranis and Annie Potts, two Ghostbusters assistants, babysitting and romancing.
I think motherhood's a very natural instinct. I'm like a child myself. And you?
Now that scene isn't much, but it's appealing because it's at least different from the original picture. The rest of this movie, save for the introduction of the baby, is virtually a carbon copy with the Ghostbusters battling the slime as well as a 16th century demon hiding in a painting in a New York museum. The Ghostbusters seem tired of what's going on. The special effects seem all too familiar. I know it isn't true, but the movie comes across as if the guys were filming the first draft of a script.
I agree with you completely. This movie is a total disappointment. No thought went into it, no effort went into it, there's no comedy in it, and it's not just a critic sitting there in, I don't believe in reviewing the audience. You and I both think that, we have our own opinions, but I did go to see it in a real movie theater in Michigan with several hundred people, and they sat through the entire movie. They were there to have a good time. There was one laugh. One laugh in 2 hours.
I only laughed once. I laughed at the line about Laura Antonelli. I thought that was funny, but that's a movie.
That's an in-joke. I mean,
sure
you and I, might know who she is, but how many Ghostbusters fans necessarily do? This movie is a complete disappointment. This is a demonstration of the bankruptcy of sequels. If you're going to make a sequel, you have to think it through. You don't just want to repeat it. You don't want to do the same thing again. And
I was very surprised because
I was shocked.
I figure, where's the effort?
Yeah.
You know you have a home run going in if you make a decent picture. How cynical to not... With the film we've all been looking forward to. Porky's 2 the next day.
I was looking forward to seeing it 10 years from now. Porky's 2 is a continuation of last summer's enormous box office hit named Porky's, and it features the same crowd of immature teenagers in a new series of practical jokes involving sex, crummy teachers, and square adults. Now, here's a scene that I think pretty well captures the spirit of this terrible movie.
You guys are just jealous because I ruined Wendy for everybody else. Oh, no. Well, now this just had me. What's wrong? Yeah, well, that's not what she told me. Well, what did she tell you? Ask her, Peter. Here she comes. Yeah, I can hear her panting from here. Look, man, when they've been had by Pee Wee Morris, they stay had. I mean, they can't keep their hands off me. And you guys better watch out, because when she sees me, you're liable to get caught in a stampede. Watch this. Hi, boys. She's in a frenzy. Oh, she's rabid. She didn't see me. She didn't know I was here. That's what she said about you last night on the bus? Oh, man, the girl's my slave.
That kind of an attitude toward women absolutely makes me cringe. It makes my skin crawl. If the whole movie were like that, it'd be bad. But unfortunately, this whole movie is worse than that scene. Maybe the filmmakers were self-conscious about the attacks that critics made on their bubble-brained subject matter in the last movie, because anyway, this time there's a ridiculous and distasteful plot that makes fun of revival preachers, racists, and the Ku Klux Klan. This movie hasn't earned the right to wrap itself around those issues and to take those noble attitudes when it has such a smarmy attitude of its own. The movie ends in a big scene where hundreds of Indians watch while a bunch of Klanners have their heads shaved and then are forced to walk nude into a revival meeting. That scene is pretty sick, but meanwhile, a local girl is embarrassing a crooked politician by pretending to vomit into a fountain at a restaurant, while really what she's doing is squeezing split-pea soup into the fountain out of her falsies. Now, I'm only providing these details in the first place, so you know what I mean when I say that this movie is completely beneath contempt. There is nothing that this movie won't stoop to get a joke.
I think just reading the synopsis is enough to tell you. I mean, when you talk about scenes like that, it's pretty bad. And I really don't like the aspect that you mentioned, first of all, which is the business with the Klan. They show the Klan. How do they show the Klan? They beat up an Indian boy. How do they beat him up? Just a little black eye.
Comic buffoons.
They don't show what the Klan does, which is kill people, hang people. This is comedy Klan. This is from Archie Bunker's house. This is really, that's sick to do with something like that.
And then the whole deal with what they do with the Klan when they shave their heads using some perversion of a Jewish ritual.
Right.
It's, you know what's sick about it? It's anti-Semitism masquerading as anti-racism.
I know what you're saying.
It's sick underneath the sickness. This movie is corrupt from one end to the other.
The Great White Shark attacks again in Jaws the Revenge, the fourth movie, just when you thought it was safe to go back in the theater. And I'm Roger Ebert of the Chicago Sun-Times. That's one of 4 movies we'll review this week, and the question I always have is, when you see the shark at the top of the water, you only see its fin coming out, and yet when you get the shark's point of view, like we just saw,
looking at the people,
it's like its eyes are above the water, too. That's a logical error among many logical errors.
You've got that right. We saw the same movie. I'm Gene Siskel, the Chicago Tribune. All the major players are gone from Jaws the Revenge, except Roy Scheider's wife, and her name is now just a trivia question. Ellen Brody, played by Lorraine Gary, wife of the boss of MCA Universal Pictures, which happens to make the Jaws movies. 3D failed to save the series the last time out. This time an idiotic script sinks the whole show. The premise, Ellen Brody is a widow. Roy Scheider's character has died, meaning Scheider has enough sense to know when to stop bilking the public. And his wife in the film is convinced that a great white shark has a grudge against her family. Now you can just hear those sharks talking. I'm going to get me a Brody if it's the last thing I do. I guess that's what they say.
Very realistic. Shark talk there,
I know.
yes.
That would have been more interesting than the movie. Anyway, here's an example of Ellen Brody's fear. The scene is very early in the picture, so veteran moviegoers should be able to figure it out. Like they say on Saturday Night Live, I hate when that happens. A dream sequence. People were groaning in the theater when that happened. I mean, I want to go up and punch a hole in the screen.
They were groaning when that happened. How about the next dream sequence? Another It's Only a Dream.
I can't stand the dream sequences. Why do they do that in the movie? If there's anything that annoys an audience, it's the dream sequence. I hate that stunt. It's old, it's cheap, it's a lousy gimmick, and I wish they would stop doing it. And then that describes a whole movie. You want to probably see what the shark looks like. They show more of it this time, and by showing more of it, actually, at the end, it sort of looks fake. As for the final confrontation, Michael Caine plays a pilot who joins Ellen Brody and one of her sons, the other's dead, and one of his friends in trying to drive the shark crazy by first making it swallow an electronic beeper box. Death by noise.
Ellen, try to start the engine. Son of a... Let's get out of here.
No, it's too late, Hoagie. He's gonna come for us. Give me a hard point.
Right.
Keep it steady. It's gonna come back.
He's down.
This movie is so badly made that the death of the shark isn't even set up well. There's a key shot missing so that we don't even get the whole picture. We walk out of the theater very frustrated. And that last scene is preceded by one of the most glaring errors in recent movie history. Michael Caine has been in the water, has swum to safety onto the boat,
But in the very next scene, his shirt is as dry as if it had just been freshly laundered. Let's hope this is the end of the Jaws series. The first film was thrilling and well acted. The rest have been trash.
It's not even the next shot. Michael Caine actually comes over the rail out of the water,
Right.
and he's totally dry. I was sitting in the theater, and I said, his shirt is dry. You know, the preview audience appreciated that. You know, I always hate it when people talk during the movies, but I don't know. That seemed to go over pretty well.
Yeah.
You know, I got a question for you. I may be very badly confused here. In this, you know, usually am. In this movie, this shark wants revenge against the Brody family.
You got it.
Yes, okay. Now, in the first movie, what happened to the shark in the first movie?
Dead.
Blown to pieces, right?
Yeah.
What happened to the shark in the second movie?
I know, dead.
Yeah, right. What happened to the shark in the
They
third
all
movie?
die.
They all die. So in that case,
They're family.
what shark is this?
A friend of the other shark.
Is this like a cousin, a nephew?
You got it.
A next door neighbor?
And you know what's so great?
What?
You see, by having this gimmick, that means that even though this one dies, she still is going to stay living in that stupid town instead of moving into the Middle West where she should be, away from sharks.
So in any event, all sharks have a revenge against the
You
Brody
got
family.
it.
Right, okay, I got that. Okay, next movie.
Live in Iowa is the end.
The guys from the city start a stampede in City Slickers 2, The Legend of Curly's Gold, where once again they find themselves in cowboy country. This time they're looking for a lost gold mine they think they can find with a treasure map left behind by Curly, their trail boss at the Dude Ranch in the last movie. Curly is dead, but his twin brother, also played by Jack Palance, and how's that for a gimmick to get Jack Palance back in the movie when he was a big hit and they unfortunately killed his character off? He's alive and he's hot on the trail of the gold.
Curly was wrong. There are two things. Whatever the hell this is, and gold.
Just like in the original movie, the City Slickers start out completely incapable of surviving in the real world of the West, and then they adapt to conditions on the range through the liberal application of nonstop one-liners. Crystal and Palance are joined here by Daniel Stern and John Lovitz, who plays Crystal's younger brother.
All right. Now, the sun sets in the east, right?
No, the sun sets in the west.
That's if you're in the east, but we are way out west now, so we are past where the sun sets.
You can't be past where the sun sets. And if you think you can, then I am directly south of an idiot.
The original City Slickers was a very funny movie because somehow, in spite of all its improbable adventures, it seemed based on human nature. This sequel seems based more on sitcoms. Billy Crystal has said that he didn't want to make a City Slickers sequel until he was convinced he had the right screenplay. I think he was too easily convinced.
Absolutely, and I don't think he's particularly funny in this picture. I think Jack Palance is the only one who, you know, he has that great look, that craggy face against that beautiful sky, and his voice is great, but that's all there is to the picture. And I have the story that they were looking for, and I just thought of it while you were talking.
Oh, good for you.
And here's what they should have done. Obviously, if they're going to have Curly's brother come back, he's the most interesting character, have Curly come into their world. Right? Why go back out to the Old West and do the same movie over again? Why not have Curly come into their New York City world? It could have been absolutely hilarious.
Kind of, yeah, I think it's been done though. Crocodile Dundee.
All right, but it would have been a flip. It wouldn't have been the same movie. All they did was make the same movie over again.
I'm not sure that you actually have the answer.
Oh, that's
Gene.
because I came up with it, and you don't. You didn't come up with it.
I'm glad I did.
I can smell it.
200 years after her death, Sigourney Weaver is cloned back to life in Alien Resurrection, one of the big new films we'll be reviewing this week on Siskel and Ebert. I'm Gene Siskel of the Chicago Tribune.
I'm Roger Ebert of the Chicago Sun-Times. The Alien series of science fiction thrillers, which began so promisingly in 1979, has finally run completely out of steam. And if you doubt that, consider Alien Resurrection, the fourth in the series, where the original ideas that distinguish the first two movies are replaced, as they were in the third, by countless shots of monsters jumping up and scaring everybody. Sigourney Weaver stars once again and is very good, the best thing in the film, as Ellen Ripley, the space scientist who killed herself at the end of the third film to put a final end to the evil aliens, but alas, she didn't succeed. Now 2 centuries have passed, and a drop of her blood has been cloned to bring her back, personal memories and all.
It's a queen.
How did you know that?
She'll breed. You'll die.
Incredibly, a secret military faction needed Ripley to act as a foster mother for a new generation of aliens, which a galactic government wants to study for medical purposes.
The ship crosses paths with a tramp freighter whose crew includes Winona Ryder as a woman with a secret. Ryder is a gifted actress, but she's never really convincing in this film. She doesn't have the ferocious concentration to go up against the grim Weaver character.
They've taken it out of you. Where is it? Is it on the ship?
You mean my baby?
There isn't a whole lot of plot, just enough to support the movie's premise, which is that this alien form reproduces like crazy and has only one speed, all-out attack.
Moving! It's jammed!
In her review of one of the Alien movies, Pauline Kael called it an example of the boo movie. Things jump up and go boo when we're supposed to be scared. When they jump up once in a long while unexpectedly, as they did in the 1979 Alien, we were scared. But in Alien Resurrection, the characters are unfocused, the plot is piecemeal, and the monsters are putting on the same old act.
Boy, it wore me out very quickly.
Yeah.
And the premise, Roger, the convoluted story, I mean, of setting this up, I mean, I'm lost in 15 minutes. I'm glad you explained it. Now I figured out what was going on. But it's not about that.
I'm not sure that I did.
Oh, I don't even care if you did. It is
200 years go past, and they get a drop of her blood, and it has the alien embryo in it. They're able to clone her and the alien baby.
I'll believe it, but here's what it is.
Okay.
It's 2 hours of teeth and slime and exploding sex, and that's a noise, and that's all it really is. And I felt as I walked out that I had endured an experience and certainly not enjoyed
well,
it.
those aliens seem to be able to reproduce themselves at will, to grow into tons and tons of alien biomass, despite apparently no food, and they're able to attack at will, go anywhere they want to, and yet they're so dumb that they always get defeated. You'd think that eventually they'd win.
I hate to see a first-class brain, yours, talk about this movie to the extent you just did.
It is a painful side, I realize that, yes.
You're wasting your neurons, my friend.
Thank
okay,
you.
Next movie. The fourth time is not the charm with the Lethal Weapon series, in my opinion, which is simply too silly and too predictable in its comic rhythms for its own good. Once again, the principal cut-ups are detectives Riggs and Murtaugh, Mel Gibson and Danny Glover, who are combating an Asian gang that is smuggling illegal Chinese labor into this country. One of the signatures of this series is that Riggs and Murtaugh never stop cracking wise during the action scenes. The jokes are so widespread here that it sounds like they received their training not at a police academy, but at a comedy club.
Right there. Yeah, that's him. Get me right up behind this trailer. But you're driving, huh? No, you're driving. Will you please trust me for once?
All of the key supporting characters are back, mostly for laughs, including the annoying Joe Pesci character. New to the action is a real veteran of comedy clubs, Chris Rock, who plays a junior detective always trying to impress his senior officers.
Oh, I'm a perp? Oh, you see a young brother in the back of a police car, automatically I'm a perp? Look at my suit. Look at my tie. What do I look like, the Crips accountant? Look at this badge. Look, check out the gun.
Okay, hey, okay, put the gun down, put the gun down.
Rene Russo returns as Gibson's love, who is now carrying his baby.
You want to get married, don't you?
No. Yes. Yes, I do.
I reached a point in Lethal Weapon 4 where I didn't care anymore about its serious element, the story here with the Chinese. It didn't matter to me if anyone saved the illegal aliens. I just didn't want to hear any more jokes. Thumbs down from me.
Thumbs down for me too, Gene. And at one point in the movie, everything stops so they can explain the plot, which, as nearly as I can remember, has something to do with the Chinese mafia importing the 4 warlords from China to America, where the triad is going to buy them back using counterfeit money or something. And you want, why bother with a plot? Now, actually, though, of course, Richard Donner is a good action director, and there are some nice action sequences in this film, especially the one where Gibson, or a stuntman, is being dragged behind a trailer on a freeway on a plastic sheet. If you only want mindless action, you got to admit this is better than Armageddon.
What a recommendation. Boy, I'd love to see that in the quote. And it's The Odd Couple 2. And as bad as My Giant is, this is worth. Because Odd Couple 2 is a pathetic sequel to a comedy classic, once again starring Walter Matthau as Oscar Madison, the messy one, and Jack Lemmon as Felix Unger, the obsessively neat one. And this whole lifeless project with hoary old jokes plays as a desperate attempt to cash a big paycheck for 2 veteran stars who probably don't need the money. There isn't a witty moment in this script, which was written by the character's creator, Neil Simon. Amazing.
Don't you take them with water?
With the local water? Oh, water from around here? Don't you know how many pesticides they have in the local water?
Lower your voice, will you? People in here don't know they're going to be dead in a week.
I said hoary old jokes. Here's a sample of the film's toilet humor.
Open the window, will you? I want to throw the water out.
It is open.
Matthau doesn't look like he's having a good time, and Jack Lemmon hasn't stooped this low in years because he's been making a series of decent dramatic pictures. These guys can't be that financially desperate, can they? To soil their reputations with junk like this? A big thumbs down from me on The Odd Couple 2.
Thumbs down for me, too, although I suppose it looked like a natural to make a sequel with Neil Simon writing the screenplay, and I suppose nobody had the nerve to tell Neil Simon he'd written a really, really bad screenplay.
Yes,
Oh,
yes.
Mr. Simon, you may be the most prolific playwright in Broadway history, but this is junk. Yeah. Nobody would tell him that, and so they went ahead and filmed the movie. Now, if you want to see them in a good screenplay, look at their last film together, Out to Sea. That was a charming film.
They did have charm.
They were funny. They were given characters to play, good dialogue, a fun situation.
And people to play off with.
Of course. This movie is completely dispensable.
I like your use of the word junk better than the word